德玛西亚视频站，视频背景音乐、选手主播天赋符文、隐藏分查询，就在王者学堂。还等什么？赶快扫描微信二维码，关注我们微信吧！喜欢猫咪的你，就来关注我们微信吧。
Number 2. Now I'm looking forward to seeing the super expected bans, although it would be interesting to see Syndra left open yet again. Although KT Rolster now, the ones on the blue side.
Alright, it's going to be a battle in the top lane this time. Banning out the Echo, the Jace, and might be looking for even more top lane bans if they want to continue. But definitely some expected bans to come out, though. Would you consider Jhin one of those?
Jhin is it's an acceptable ban. I don't think it's something that you might need to necessarily ban, but it is not outside of the norm. The Syndra ban, though, by Kangoo Monsters, that is much more normal against a blue side team.
They did ban it out against Seoul in game number 1. It's his most played highest win rate, 80 carry by far, so nice to see them removing that. But now that we're through the bans, finishing out with the expected Nidalee and a maybe unexpected Karma ban, what's the first pick here for KT?
I mean, the first pick that KT is probably going to want to do, they can either do one of two things. You can either get an 80 carry pick out of the way, or you can get a jungler pick out of the way, because with the picks and bans unfolding the way that they did, there's no super high priority pick that needs to be selected.
Yeah, and for score as well, with Elise up, Rek'Sai up as well, you really want to get him situated in the best position possible. KT swapping around to just about everything. There they go, hovering that Teemo again. Let's just make sure that never accidentally happens. Again, there's the Zyra. Looks like they're remaining on that. So picking support, not one of the roles that you mentioned. So what's the reasoning behind locking down that support pick so early?
Well, Zyra doesn't really give too much away. She still is one of the best supports in the game right now. And she has a lot of synergy with a lot of the 80 carries that are still left open. So, I mean, Kangoo Monsters has one of two options. Either you can take away the Ashe, right? Okay, well, the Ashe is now being hovered. You can take away the Ashe right now, so you can soft counter the Caitlyn, or you could take the Caitlyn, in which case you hand over the Ashe Zyra, in most cases.
Pretty good combo.
Yeah, it is a pretty good combo indeed, but the Ashe is going to be more preferable for Kangoo to pick up because of the soft counter on the Cait.
So lots of mid laners open. They were hovering Ryze, although now back to punches Lee Sin. Incredibly dominant on that champion, especially so contrasting against the Steel, who struggled so much. Now he's going up against Scores, so even with things like Elise and Rek'Sai, even Olaf open, going for Lee Sin, is that the right pick, and it will be locked in.
Yeah. So punches Lee Sin yet again. And I don't think he had too bad of a performance on it at all, by any means, last game.
Deathless for the most part.
Yeah, so definitely adept at that champion, and they haven't given away anything yet again. And this is sort of nice for Kangoo Monsters, because every single game that we've seen of them in the KeSPA Cup, for the most part, has been just very standard team compositions that don't really funnel into any style.
Next two picks here for KT Rolster. We'll see what style they want with this. Hovering in the Caitlyn, Olaf, they're locked in. And there's the Olaf we were talking about earlier. What do you think about that? Well, I know better than to ask LS what he thinks about Olaf as a champion, but here with Caitlyn, at least the 80 carry pick, kind of soft countered, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Now, the Olaf pick, he's going to have an okay time against the Lee Sin. And obviously he's going to have the immunity to the Ashe Arrow. The problem with the meta right now, for at least the junglers, is there's not so many champions that do exist inside of it, and so you sometimes do get funneled into picks like Olaf. Now again, Score is one of the best junglers in the world. If he can find an advantage early on with that Olaf, there's no better jungler to have when you get ahead as Olaf, because he's the best jungler at getting ahead. He's the best win harder champion. Now Kongdu Monster's responding, it seems, with the Nami and Poppy, and again, that's just pretty standard as well. And Poppy, one of the best champions currently in the meta. Jace banned away, as well as Echo up there in the top lane, so not left much remains. We do see a Rumble hover right now, and Rumble is a champion I was expecting to see more of in this tournament, but unfortunately we did not get to see him.
Certainly a Sunday special. Be interesting to see him grab that one. Diverse damage types, so would be interesting to watch that. And like you said, I don't think we've seen Rumble yet this tournament, so would be a first. There's the Rise hover, and we hovered over that for a brief moment earlier, but it's locked in here, and that means that Kongdu will get the opportunity to come up with a counter.
Yeah, and one of the best counters probably that can exist to Rise right now is going to be either Victor, or you do have the Cassiopeia. Primarily because Victor, you're just able to place a gravity field and shut down all attempts that Rise wants to do to get aggressive onto you. And Cassiopeia, against the new type of Rise, has a pretty easy time at bullying him and being pretty abusive against him.
Covering the Victor and Cassiopeia, both of them, but it does look like Victor's coming in for a little longer, so Victor also able to maybe outweight Clear Rise to keep him a little bit pressured. Plus, it's kind of like the same thing with Poppy, who has been picked as well. You can put gravity fields or just Poppy ult people all the way away every time Rise tries to use his teleport to get into position. So, gonna have a rough time with that. And that is the lock-in for both teams. These are our final picks, could be the final picks of the night. Kongdu Monster can pull it back once again. Is the addition of Scores Win Harder Olaf to KT enough to turn it around?
Well, I mean, KT Rolster's team composition, if they get ahead, there is zero opportunity for recovery by Kongdu Monster's team composition. If they go completely even, I love Kongdu Monster's team comp. I think it has so many available options inside of it, and I feel like it covers basically anything that you could ask it to. So if the game goes late, I feel like they have the advantage, but if KT gets any sort of an inch, they'll take it an entire mile.
Certainly will, and that will do it. Heading into game number 2. Here we are going to check out the roster for both of our starting squads. For KT Rolster, their substitution will need to have a huge effect. There you can see Score in the jungle for Steel with Someday Fly, Arrow, and Hachani as the roster coming in here to game 2. This is Kongdu Monster, Roach, Punch, Edge, Soul, and Googer. A solid team comp, but they will need to stay safe and not give KT any sort of an advantage. Get out there on Twitter, hashtag KeSPA Cup, or KT win, or or KDM win. You want to show your support as we get into game number 2.
That fuse is fire! Tip on the gas!
Bolstered cheers from the Kongdu fans after a very strong performance, taking us in here into game number 2. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just now joining us, then wow, Kongdu Monster out to a good start. Score coming in, though, a big change. We'll not see that same crazy 5-man bottom lane strat we've been seeing come out as both teams fan out across the map.
Yep, and Punch playing it pretty safe, just trying to scout brushes out. You don't ever want to walk into an Olaf. It can get very dangerous. You can end up having to be forced to blow your flash early on. And Hachani just going for a little bit of poke onto Googer. Does get a little bit of gold.
You always have to check if the support's under by Biscuits, because that means that they're going to go heavy trades early on. Recall, pick up that pink ward, and it doesn't look like that's the strat for either side. No jungle camps looking to be taken by either duo lane. He's starting to get up here. He's trying to spawn some plants and get that early harass on him.
And I want to talk about what this match also might mean for KT. You know, failed to go to Worlds, and now you're down 0-1 against Kongdu Monsters, and this is before Season 7 fully kicks off. So if they get knocked out of the tournament this early and in such a way, it might actually impact anything to their. It could have a lot of impact for their roster.
Pushing, being won by KT as they will shove the lane a little bit harder. But a ward scouting out Punch will also help them to just reveal exactly where that jungler is. So Punch, at least as far as his role goes, was one of the strong points of KDM in game number 1. Now he's going up against Score. So keeping an eye on these jungle routes as they are mirrored across the map to see what the difference is between those two.
And there's a little bit of trading going down in the bottom lane. Punch making his way over to his blue buff side, and we have to really look to see if any sort of fireworks happen in bottom lane early on.
Definitely trying to keep an eye on everything. A fairly passive early game with Achani putting out some safe wards. Cougar spending his time trying to pop those seedlings from being turned into anything in lane. He's like the anti-Johnny Appleseed. Nothing going to be planted in lane if he has anything to do with it. Now Punch on the blue buff. Is this going to be traded over to Edge? You'd have to imagine so, given that Victor does like to stay around for enough gold for his Hex score.
Yeah, and this is one of the benefits of a red side Lee Sin, is that his path is very effective, given that he's able to simultaneously give his mid laner the blue buff while also protecting bottom lane.
And here comes a double buffed Score on the bottom half of the map. Can't imagine that it's going to be too easy for him to gank the duo lane, but at least he will be very individually strong. So what is this Olaf's purpose early on? Is it gank lanes and try to snowball, or is it just, you know, play a solid jungle path?
Well, the problem for the Olaf is that in bottom lane, Zyra and Caitlyn are going to push endlessly. So how do you really find a gank there against a red side bottom lane? Up in top lane,
corner.
Yeah, this is the only lane that Score can actually gank. He can't gank Poppy up in top until Someday has that level 6 ultimate, or if he has his level 6 ultimate. So the only real opening for him is going to be against this mid lane.
Not really much of an opening at all as he just walks out, takes the laser, and will grab a Scuttle Crab as well. So that'll at least assist him as he runs between top and mid, if he does decide to do that. Keeping an eye on bottom lane, like Cougar continuing to get poked out. I mean, plants offer a little bit of extra gold, but Cougar needing to make sure he doesn't get caught low health in lane when either Arrow or Hachani hit level 6. At this point, completely identical across the board, and really for KT, like we said, a little bit more to prove, needing to kind of redeem themselves. Someday, lackluster performance when it came to trying to qualify for Worlds, but Score looked amazing, and in really every single one of KT's postseason games, it definitely seemed like it was Score trying to just drag his team to victory. Did not transpire in that regard, and so have to wonder if that's going to be his role this time around. Early recall, picks up Lucidity boots and heads back into the jungle against Punch, and has grabbed that Caulfield's Warhammer for some early aggression. Yeah,
and Edge going to be looking for a recall probably in the very near future. He has approached that CS mark where we can assume that he is ready to purchase the upgrade to his Hex core, and that's a very big change in pace in mid lane in the Rise versus Victor matchup. And we can see that Punch is now moving over to the left-hand side, and he might be looking to make something happen here. Edge still having a lot of hit points and mana remaining, so
walking forward. I don't know, I mean, Score's in the area, so you have to imagine, but here comes Someday back into top lane versus Roach at this point. How do you see that matchup going? Is Roach playing it effectively? He's not down too much CS.
Yeah, basically Poppy is never really judged by her ability to stay even in CS, but how far behind she does fall. As long as she stays somewhat close to her lane opponent, it's generally going to be considered a victory.
Indeed, Roach hanging in there. 3 charges of Corrupting Potion left, so most likely you will be in that lane for the foreseeable future. Now, Score has been unable to affect the map just yet. No kills on the board for either team and identical goals scores, so as this game progresses through the early game, what are you really trying to achieve on both sides? Does Kongdu just really want to get their Poppy past her weak point into a position to scale? Or is KT trying to force aggressive objectives to get score ahead?
Well, the problem for... Oh, hold that thought, as Someday might...
Trying to keep him off. Someday dropping pretty low there, but score on top of Edge. Flash over the wall, the follow's good. It's going to be a first blood. 1 kill apiece, but I believe that was actually Kongdu that got the first kill.
Yes, Kongdu did get the first blood, and it's really funny how close we are in gold, actually, and a little bit of a trade happening in bottom lane right now. A little dangerous for Kongdu Monsters. But as you were asking, and hold that thought, everybody, take a look at the replay. So Kongdu Monsters pulls the trigger really fast, and when they get onto Someday, I thought that his decision to not flash into Baron Pit was a little bit interesting, and they were able to find the kill onto Edge right there and trade 1 for 1. But when you factor in the scaling and the question that you had asked me just before that fight happened...
Oh, punch! That's devastating.
Yeah, Kongdu is going to be the ones that, if they can reach 2 core items, it gets extremely problematic from KT from then on out, unless they have an edge.
All right, well, Punch now, he's the one who needs to get out of dodge there. Lots of damage, and Fly actually has his ultimate canceled. Nice lockdown to prevent him from getting that aggressive positioning. Red buff secured, not stolen away, but Punch did get that little swag smite steal. Like you said, to get back on point, getting Roach into a good spot moving forward is going to be a big asset.
Yes, indeed. The blue buff being handed over to Edge, and he went for the second Hex Core upgrade immediately, so his Q giving a lot of utility, which definitely helps for gank assistance.
Certainly will, and now that Edge has started to get himself into that comfort zone, Fly kind of there as well. He does have the tier to continue to stack that one up, and we'll just be trying to scale as far as he goes. But when it comes to KT, do you think there's maybe too much magic damage on their team that's going to make it more effective for Kongdu to itemize?
I think that as the game does progress on, it becomes very easy for Roach to itemize against this KT Rolster team composition. One of the things that they will have to worry about is going to be how they work around Hachani's ultimate on Zyra, because that can make it a little bit difficult for Punch and Roach to find openings. The luxury that they will have, however, is that Victor, he has quite some long range.
Score actually ghosting into the bottom lane to try to just desperately catch Soul or Googer. Now there is no follow-up for him. He'll just push them way back away from their turret. And that means that he could just hang out and try brush and wait to crush this bottom turret. Scouted out.
Making his way up. Hawkshot comes out to probably just see exactly if Ryze was actually on his way over as well.
Yeah, ult's up for everyone on Kongdu. Keeping an eye in the area. Oh no, Hachani! As was commented by our Korean casters, nice to see at least some consistency there. Hachani going down. Not the first kill on his team. First death on his team, rather, but we'll eventually get in there for the early Hachani deaths we know and love. I'm not sure why we're replaying this. He just walks up and dies.
Yeah, this was very bizarre type of death.
Yeah, that's the one punch man in the jungle for Kongdu. Absolutely blowing Hachani apart and getting in for some counter jungling as well.
And as we approach the 11-minute mark, KT does not seem to have the type of advantage that I would have wanted them to have with this team composition moving forward. And it's not to say that they can't still turn team fights. I'm just not being a real believer of what's going to happen. And Victor already has his 3rd Hex Core upgrade. And, I mean, when Ashe has her rune on Hurricanes and fights start breaking out, it's going to be a real task for KT to somehow coordinate a victory.
And Roach actually ahead in CS against Someday as well. A player who definitely struggled and has a lot to prove here. Versus Roach, scaling Papu's on his way, moving on up, as the Jeffersons would say. Now, Punch also making these kind of aggressive calls to get out there on the map, make these, put himself in a position to succeed. Right there on time to take out Hachani. Very impactful in these last few team fights for Kongdu, and really just looks super good. And I mean, this is Score. It's okay to expect a lot. He does have the only kill on KT. But he needs more to snowball that Olaf into a position to carry.
Yep. And right now, Fly, as you can see, he's just on the edge of being able to complete one of his first core items, Arrow coming up. And even though it doesn't connect, I think that's still okay in the end. Edge not really under any pressure. I don't know what Score is trying to make happen. You're never going to kill a Victor with that much utility and having Cleanse Up. So Score just sort of wasting time. He's even fallen behind in CS to Punch, and an Olaf that is going to be at 15 minutes with just 1 kill behind in CS. I mean, he's already useless as it is, but it's going to be pretty useless moving forward as well.
No love there for the Olaf pick on Score. What function, I mean, so Olaf gets ahead and starts snowballing. What function does that really give KT? Is it just that they're stronger in the jungle matchup, or is it essential to their team comp?
Well, Olaf's very oppressive due to the fact that he ignores CC, and it's not like you can sort of just wait and delay the CC against it or something because of the speed at which he comes at you. So it opens up a lot of plays that are basically unpeculiar to try to deal with. Oh, and a little bit of poke happening on Fly right there, and that's pretty problematic because Victor's lethal is quite high.
Poor jump over the wall there by Punch. I actually thought he was just going to jump to Edge, but won't need to. Just gets out safe and sound, and doesn't necessarily want to fight Score at this point. Score now running down to the bottom lane, but deciding against it. Very indecisive here from the KT jungler.
Yeah, this is actually a little bit dangerous. I still feel like KT could actually win this 2v2. So getting away is in their best interest. Blue buff needs to be handed over to Edge right now, and one thing I want to point out right now is that it's very intelligent of Punch to just piggyback onto Score, because as long as the lanes continue the way that they are, that's going to be beneficial for Kongdu Monsters, and a really bad thing for KT to have happen. And it looks like maybe they're trying to hand over their blue buff to Fly, but never mind, he backs away.
Tidal Wave coming in, the smite's good for the steal, and Score will at least take the buff away from Edge. How important was that deny?
That deny is pretty big. As you can see, Edge is about at 40% total mana. And, a little snare missed by Hachani just now. But Edge in mid lane, he's not going to be able to sustain too many more waves, so he's looking at a recall. And when generally his next recall would ideally be a needlessly large rod, so we can begin to move into that Rylai's Crystal Scepter, this is definitely going to hurt it and stun any other items he would be able to afford.
Punch bottom waiting to defend is now, here comes Fly, and Punch can definitely tell he's in the right place at the right time. Now, needing to watch out, there's the ward comes over the wall. It's a 3v4 coming down to the bottom lane turret. Teleport in there comes Punch. Does get locked down by some grasping roots, but over across the wall, Fly forced to flash and, or actually, yeah, just flashing away. Get the ghost animation from the Scuttle Crab, but completely countered there by Kongdu.
So they're able to resist that dive attempt by KT here. It does come at the cost of Roach's teleport, but that's not going to be such a big defeat. First Dragon on the map being Cloud Dragon, and Score coming for the
not
big
taking
grab.
no for an answer. Okay, that pink ward is there for some reason. I guess it's for Someday's teleport potentially. But either way, turret will still fall, so an advantage taken nonetheless by KT's relentless aggression.
Yep, they do manage to pick up the first blood turret of the game. My big worry, though, is up there in the top lane. You can see that Rumble having a bit of a lot of items. He has that Haunting Guise already. That probably won't be a Leandri's unless that's going to be what he immediately transforms it into. But Poppy already on her way to the Spirit Visage, and from there things are only going to begin to get worse with a magic resistance stack that's going to likely be able to come out of Kongdu Monsters.
You start to see that already being built. The Spirit Visage on the way there for Roach. Not actually able to fight Someday, at least straight up, or at least trying to so far, but certainly is still scaling up. Score able to kill what's left of that red buff camp, but Punch really doing a great job at punishing this KT jungle.
Yeah, I think that Punch is doing a pretty fantastic job at just playing defensively and matching and counter ganking, because that's all he needs to do. You have a Victor and you have a Poppy. They have an Olaf. all you need to really do is make it to that late game, but Cougar might go down here.
Yeah, ace in the hole to follow, takes him down to half health, but a Tidecaller's Blessing able to get Cougar out safe and sound, did force out his flash, but that's ultimate and Ghost. Well, Ghost wasn't up for score, but it's ult down for score. Bubble won't land, and so just pressure on the Dragon for Kongdu.
Yeah, had either that bubble or the Ash Arrow managed to land, that could have gotten pretty disastrous for KT. And
oh, punch coming in, that's going to force the Ghost out. Fly running around like a crazy all over the place, but not able to find a kill, and of course certainly able to stay alive there. Neither jungler effective in mid lane at all.
Everyone is, for the most part, staying pretty even in CS. The only case which that's not going to be ideal is going to be in the top lane, because that means that Poppy gets to do whatever she wants. Roach probably actually already capable of completing the Spirit Visage, but she's just staying in the lane right now. Has teleport up. First dragon of the game, Cloud Dragon. It is beneficial to both team comps, but it's not a dragon that you would really bend over backwards for, such as an Inferno Drake or a Mountain Drake.
Might see those a little bit later on, but Cloud is first on the bat. As far as this game goes, I mean, KT ahead in gold by just about 1,000, but really as far as participation goes, as we start to scale up, I mean, 20-minute marks is coming up here pretty soon. What are we looking at past that? Who really gets the most out of scaling up late game?
Well, I mean, the scaling late game, as I mentioned before, they have the Poppy and they have the Victor, and the enemy team has an Olaf. So eventually what's going to happen is Victor is going to be unstoppable, because KT doesn't have a reliable way of getting onto him other than score. But if Victor is completely
here we
unscathed...
go! Flash away there, but Sol... Ouch! That is one effective way of picking off a lone AD carry. Kongdu lose their carry, and now need to find what objective they can take off the back of that. I mean, they did get Cloud Drake. Blue is up. Punch is there right on time to maybe steal it back for his team once again.
Yep, that was a nice little pickup by KT. Going back to the scaling though, they have their work cut out for them for trying to deal with the late game Victor and a late game Poppy.
Going in, punch with a possible insect, but not a whole lot of follow-up. Blue buff getting low, and we haven't seen score on top of these fight steals. Who gets it? That is actually taken by, I believe, Fly. Punch going in, but going down almost immediately.
Yeah, I don't understand what Punch was just doing right there. I mean, it was a good ultimate by Hachani, because at that point, there's almost no way out from Punch.
Did Edge or Fly pick that up? They both have blue buffs, so I wasn't able to figure out exactly who grabbed it there at the last second.
Edge, I do believe, picked it up.
Okay. So, worth for KT. They don't steal the blue buff. They do kill Punch, so it's going to maybe set him back teeny tiny bit. Pressure on the mid lane. So who really came out ahead in the last 2-3 minutes since we've been discussing the future?
Well, KT came out, well, it's hard to say who has come out ahead because nothing catastrophic has happened for Kongdu Monsters. Taking a look at this again, this was good, but honestly Punch should have just tried to live, because there's no opportunity for them to get any sort of a kill here, missing most of their champions. Now, KT did find advantages, they did find kills, and they managed to pick up a dragon, but it's hard to say that they really came out ahead, given that, again, Kongdu didn't have anything super bad happen to them, and they're the ones that are putting KT on a clock in terms of team comps.
Well, now, as the clock does keep ticking, Baron taking over the Rift Herald puts that objective on the map, and it certainly doesn't seem like either team has too much of a crazy Baron composition, but at least there's an objective on the map that means a little bit more than Cloud Drake. And while that was taken by KT, which will help them anytime they try to go for these out-of-combat engages, still have to keep an eye on the scaling we were talking about.
And Someday just pushing in top turret, and it would be very nice of them to actually just get the top turret killed and destroyed at this point. That way Someday is going to be a lot more free with his roams, because at this point Roach and Someday are essentially on an island and they're just free to keep scaling up and getting whatever items they choose.
So what are KT looking for, or KDM rather? They ran up the river, they're kind of chilling around there, now maybe trying to make the trip back down. It's just like looking for pick potential because at least KT seem to be grouped up and prepared.
Well, not quite sure exactly what they are looking for or why they're fighting over the vision they are.
Well, we didn't even see that. Off to the side, I'm guessing Soul either like face checked into a trap or something went down. Oh, I mean, Soul went down. We'll see exactly how here in the near future. I believe Punch did get the smite steal on that wolf spirit. Let's watch this once again. Fires the arrow and then, yeah, just face checks into a trap.
Okay, well. Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea anyway, even if you do land the arrow from that angle.
All right, well, 1v1 in the mid lane. Both goes fairly even. The second tier turret gets cracked on the bottom half thanks to Soul just now respawning back in base.
Yep, and now they're looking to move to mid lane to take this turret, and with Edge being recalled right now, I'm very doubtful that Punch is going to be able to resist this. Although Googer is here. Now this is definitely going down right now. You see Roach trying to rotate down. They might want to make to look a fight happen.
Ooh. Off center on the tidal wave, and so no follow-up off of that outer turret dropping. That means that 3 turrets have been taken to actually 0 objectives for Kondu so far. So continuing to fall back further behind. Now a 5,000 gold deficit. KT seeming to have righted the ship and on par with their team fights for shot calling, taking these objectives.
Yep. So they have a pretty nice gold advantage right now. Mostly all of them are inside of those turrets. And so Kongdu, they're not completely out of the game. We have yet to see a real team fight actually unfold. Most of KT's kills have been from just Kongdu monsters stepping outside of the boundaries or just doing very silly things.
It was a strong start for Kongdu, even in game number 1 as well. But for now, when it comes to stepping out of position, it certainly seems to have put the kills and the gold on pretty much the worst members possible. Worst for Kongdu because his score now is 2-0-1, starting to get a little accelerated. And Arrow, especially with that. Oh, I don't want to call it quite a 1v1 because Soul is pretty helpless, but with that kill onto the Kongdu AD carry, establishing himself in a much stronger position for this point in the game. Now that Dragon is respawning, we're about to find out exactly what that is.
Oh,
it is a mountain drake. Oh, now almost thinking, whoa, Arrow! No, not the net you're looking for! This Arrow's starting to get completely blown up. Soul, though, equally unlucky and will get exploded. That huge Hachaniel equalizing this, and maybe not so equal anymore as KT look to massacre this fight. 3-for-1 exchange, and now maybe even Roach getting taken out. He's pretty tanky and will grab a buckler, knocking both of his assailants back to their team. KT with a wacky start there for Arrow, but riding the ship with 3 more kills.
Yeah, Arrow giving a little bit of a shout out to Imp as he net into the enemy team. But unfortunately, though, for Kongdu Monsters, even with that kill, what you're going to see is that their positioning is way too bad to actually handle the Olaf. If you can make the Olaf funnel into you and you can kite him backwards, then it's going to be good. But you saw Punch and Soul were both knocked up by that Zyra ultimate, and in that case, of course, Score is just going to run you down and maul you over. And at that point, I mean, you're going to lose the team fight every time.
Oh, okay, well, okay, that's going to be some days untimely demise, and Arrow walks forward. Now, I mean, Score's pretty strong, but he's going to use that to disengage, and that's 2 free picks for Kongdu. Hey!
Yeah, 2 free picks for Kongdu Monsters, and meanwhile, up in the top lane, Soul just getting free farm and probably looking to take this turret.
Oh boy, mid lane, I thought actually Fly was going to make a little bit more happen, but nice gravity field. Like you said, Victor able to just throw that down and win the fight. Now, we're about to find out, record scratch, freeze frame. You're probably wondering how Someday got into this spot. We're about to find out.
Yeah, and this is all just pretty standard. I think that Someday wasn't expecting Roach to be able to do what he did right here, and even those scores here, you can see that they don't really have the damage, and he cast his ultimate, but Punch has been a very slippery Lee Sin. both of these 2 games and managed to pick up 2 kills right there, and they even got a tower, so only a 2-tower deficit right now, 4,000 gold lead for KT Monster. And if the next 2 towers fall, that, I mean, that all but almost evaporates the gold advantage.
Okay, Fly. Whoa, Soul. If he had been a little closer to that wall, things could have gone badly. His positioning seems to be kind of I kind of want to say unlucky, because he like face checked into the trap. He got just barely knocked up by the Hachani Zyra ult in that last fight and taken down. So gotta keep an eye on it.
Yeah, a lot of his positioning is very questionable, and some of the choices that he's making, I don't feel like they necessarily have the vision control in order to do this. And
Arrow hits Hachani. Scorgan goes forward and maybe try to put on some pressure. Punch capitalizing, finishing off the kill. Diving to the backline is Score, and it's going to be enough to kill off Soul. Punch now trying to run for the hill, but it's Score just running a train on the Kongdu Monsters. Punch will be taking up to shake off that ace in the hole, but there's Someday right on time to burninate the countryside and take him down.
yeah, and they did not have Poppy. Soul is super, super out of position. And, I mean, that's been basically the story of a lot of Kongdu's problems this game has been Soul seems to not have a soul, at least in this game.
Well, his soul kind of residing back in base along with his dead body a lot of the time, and Baron just getting completely melted. This feels a lot like those old school Sivir comps where you just push the go button and run the enemy team down. Soul doesn't respect that, and Score just kind of runs them over. And we're about to watch this again. Arrow hits Hachani, but that's actually good for KT.
Yeah, so it was really good for Kongdu Monsters to decimate him right there, but then Soul's positioning after the follow-up is super bad, and when Guger misses the bubble there onto Fly, it's too easy for everyone to just chase down, and Arrow is just having a field day of free damage. And when you make positionary mistakes like this, Olaf will punish you.
Certainly is doing a great job, and you talked about how no jungler snowballs harder than Olaf. Frozen Heart now completed, basically indestructible. And when he can just run on your backline, 80 carry like Soul, whose position's a little bit too far forward or next to those walls like he was in that last fight, it's gonna be happy time for Score, and of course for KT fans out there are gonna be pretty happy as well.
Alright, and now as we move forward, Baron buff is up for KT, and Dragon coming up in 2 minutes. A little bit of trading happened from Score.
Score, do not think Roach wants to fight that fight, because that is a 3v1, going to completely whip his ult and fall down dead immediately. I heard some applause from the crowd. I was like, okay, well, those are the KT fans. That was not a great spot for Roach to be in. Just some questionable positioning, really on both sides. Earlier on, we saw Someday and Arrow just completely get caught out of position. That time, it's Roach's turn, and that might even be worse, as now Kongdu threatening to lose their first base turn of the game.
Yep. And, alright, that's a little bit weird. I feel like it's very easy to have Olaf at that point tank the turret and just kill it, especially because Fly can just join the fight with his ultimate at any point, and that's not a fight that Kongdu Monsters wants to be taking. But they're playing it very slow and steady. Caitlyn traps right there are definitely obnoxious. They don't have a proper way to deal with that.
Oh, going forward, a big equalizer pushes Soul way back to the back, and Score's just gonna Ragnarok all over him. Does turn around there, he doesn't want to overextend. Pushing forward, and there's actually a Chaos Storm and an Arrow in the back line. Fly versus Roach. I think Roach is gonna come around here and do a good, decent position. Taking damage, Score very low. Can Kongdu turn this around? KT gets a good engage. Might not be able to find anything more than that first base turret kill, although now that they push back in, Edge pretty low on mana, inhibitor will fall. KT get away with the engage, will take the turret and inhib with them.
Yeah, but that team fight was basically an example of what could potentially happen if this game goes on another 15 or so minutes, and that you see that once Score is completely out of fuel, and if Someday doesn't have his ultimate, or they're forced to funnel into Kongdu Monsters, then Kongdu's team composition, as long as they can weather the storm, will actually beat KT's, but I don't think that they're going to get to make it there.
If the game goes late enough, maybe that equalizes. And you mentioned, oh, Soul. Just a moment of silence here for our unlucky KDM compatriot. Continually just rough rough positioning, gets taken out for his 5th death of the game. 0-5 the score for him. Definitely a little bit under the weather. It's like the Ghost of Steel has possessed Soul's body. We're seeing a very similar performance. That's going to be the 2nd Mountain Drake in a row going down to KT, who will have all too easy a time pushing forward with these further objectives.
Yeah, and while Victor may be the king of wave clear, it does not seem it's going to matter, as Arrow's Caitlyn melted that turret, and here comes Roach from the left-hand side. They don't have their AD carry, but you know, who really notices? They haven't had him much anyway.
Well, there goes Roach, I think a little ahead of schedule. Oh man, big Arrow coming in, will be instant cleanse to the back line. Arrow, I actually think, didn't get hit by it at all, but now Score, the one forced to run away. That Chaos Storm almost takes him down, and it's a casualty, says someday falls. Cougar there, gonna get a shield up there, Fly exhausted, should be able to take him back in the back line. Roach able to survive there. Punch getting the knockup, almost kills the Chani, but now he's going to be the one to be running for his life. Goes down there. Roach isn't the hero play. He's coming in, but goes down. It's a double for Fly, who ults in for the triple and picks up the ace for KT.
That might be game over. I'm not quite sure. Cougar is coming up in 20 seconds. At the very least, it'll actually be a Nexus turret. And when we get a replay of that fight, I can't even actually, there's nothing for me to say about Soul that would be very polite, in the fact that all he had to do was auto attack and stand still, and yet he turned around, and that slight kiting actually resulted in them losing the fight.
Because of how little HP KT survived with. That's going to be the Nexus turret falling. Bubble will not matter as the Nexus goes down. This time it's KT's turn to double up Kong Du in the score. At the end of the game, the Nexus will fall. That's an 18-9 victory for KT Rolster.
And what a victory it was, keeping them in the series tied 1-1. Score with a super performance on the Olaf the longer that the game kept going on, and that was a very big win, and they needed it right now, and I don't expect to see Score subbed out for game number 3.
Gotta give that Steel guy a chance, man. But exactly as you were saying, maybe a slow start for Score, but he definitely picked up the momentum right as his team needed him. Soul, gotta get some momentum behind this guy for KDM, because there's no one for him to be subbed out for. They will have to come back with their same starting 5 as KT finally find the 5 to get them into a 1-1 tie. Coming into game number 3, a lot on the line for both of these teams. A trip to Busan and a chance to prove themselves. The KeSPA Cup round of 4 on the line. So we head out to a quick break coming up. So you guys do not want to go out there. Get out there, tell your friends. There's a lot happening here as we take a break to replay our final fight of the game.
Yeah, so Roach took so much damage, but like a cockroach, he managed to actually get out and live. And unfortunately for Edge, his ultimate not able to finalize the kill onto Score. So you just watch what's happening right now, and you can see the Edge barely able to live. Punch finds a Q, and his AD carry does not trust him. You see that slight turn by Soul right there that cost them the entire team fight. That half of a second completely dictated the entire pace of this, and ultimately the end result resulting in the final push on their Nexus.
Absolutely incredible turnaround there at the end. I felt like the health bars were so low that almost anything could have happened. That's where small things like that slight little kiting error make the biggest difference. We'll find out if Kong Du are going to Busan or KT Rolster close it out.